Hello, I'm Julian Ryan, and welcome to Thriving in Your Bunker, a holistic guide to navigating your virtual existence and your endless communications. Today, we're going to talk about what will help us communicate more effectively as we continue to live and work in our digital islands. I want to start off by identifying our common ground. One, we are attending a conference, yet we are not. We never got to leave our bunkers. I even had to bring my own palm tree so I can get into the right mindset. Now, I don't know about your conference invite, but mine didn't include an option for in-room catering. No one has stopped by my desk to offer me cheese and crackers or ask me if I'd like to have my coffee refreshed. And I'm going to wager a bet that none of you had an opportunity to play golf today. You didn't get to enjoy an activity that was always a key part of your conference experience. But you know who else is disappointed that you didn't get to go away and play golf? Your staff. You see, up until this year, the ProcureCon conference concept was based on an effective model that worked. You got to go and travel someplace nice and pretend it was all hard work and tough going. And your staff got to stay behind and continue working. However, your departure gave them a chance to catch their breath and take a mental break before you came wheeling back into the office with the big new ideas and trying to change everything. Now, this was an essential cornerstone of your change management process. Now your staff has nothing. They don't even have a decent travel buffer day. So take my first bit of communication guidance. If you want to see your staff have a reasonable level of buy-in at your next meeting, find time to play golf, even if it means miming 18 holes in your home office. Do it for your staff. Don't mess with a proven process. So while we're on the subject of change management, let's discuss what's happening. When we were in school, we learned that in order to be effective at change management, we could need to limit the amount of things you try to change at one time. This year, that rule of thumb went out the window, where everyone changed everything at the same time and constantly. So we start to look like these seagulls diving in and trying to retrieve information and resources and establish some kind of control. So take a moment right here to acknowledge what you went through and what it took for you to get to this point in time. And now let's talk about multitasking and focused conversations. Because don't think I don't know what's going on the other side of this screen. I may not be able to see you, but I know. Your homes have turned into miniature cities with work meetings, school meetings, classes, special events, supply chain logistics, and catering going on at the same time, and many times using the same router. And despite being aware of all the scientific research that states that multitasking and being truly present and listening does not happen, you and only you are really convinced that you can pull it off. You truly believe that you can do something else and listen to other people, and specifically me, and be present. Well, forget about it. It doesn't happen. So I want you to put in your chat box or raise your hand if you have been multitasking throughout this whole conference. I thought so. All right. So now that we've gotten all that clear, let's talk about what's happening on our brain when things are not going right. I'm going to use a few of the slides from my newly published book. All right. So what's happening when we send a message out? We're making assumptions that our messages are getting to the part of the brain we need and want, like the listening part, like the remembering part. But Our assumptions can be like that little kid back in school who was always trying to get us in trouble, coming up with a bad idea that doesn't work. So keep that in mind. And then next, those assumptions are also hanging out with tougher characters sometimes called transference, who wanted to remind us about our prior experiences and are eager to use information to write our inner dialogues about the people in our current situations. So if you find yourself overreacting in a situation, take a pause and ask yourself, who's writing this script and why? And unfortunately, sometimes we get it wrong. We didn't catch a message. We didn't send a message because it was stuck in draft. And our messages are hanging out there like pigeons on a New York windowsill, waiting to go someplace. So what's our option? We got to man and woman up and just own it and move on. If anything sounds familiar of what you've been doing, feel free to put your hand up in chat again. Just don't overshare. Thanks. So what's going to help? I advise practicing and learning the art of active listening. It's a methodology that enables us to restate and confirm information and engage in focused listening. We also need to prepare for our listening and be aware of what's getting in the way so we can help put others at ease. And that last point is more important now than it ever was before. We also need to take a pause. The more noise, the more conflict, the more activity, the more important it is to create a quiet moment for ourselves to go inward, even if it means 5 or 10 minutes. I encourage you to try out mindful meditation. Now, a few of you have heard me poke some fun at mindfulness in a prior presentation, but I own those words. But I also want to let you know that about a year ago, I sat at a conference as well and listened to somebody talk about how helpful it was for helping us address our parasympathetic system, which is the part that helps us digest and rest. So that little bit of information and the knowledge, meditation has been around for 5,000 years, and maybe there's something to it, got me to give it another chance. So give it a go. One of the things we've been trying to figure out for ourselves is how do we continue to connect with others? And it's looking a little bit different lately because we are spending most of our time on Zoom. Now, this is a really classy picture of an organized desk and all these little happy faces looking back at the person. No one is showing pictures of us crawling under our desk trying to make sure our connections are working, or showing situations like I had about a couple of weeks ago where I was invited to speak at a university, had my tech check with the organizer, and then she promptly disappeared, never to be seen again, about 3 minutes before the live presentation. So I hung out there in cyberspace, waiting for someone to connect me. And hopefully that's going to be the one and only of that situation going forward. So in the chat box, please let me know how many Zoom meetings you have on an average day. And then include the ones that also are the personal ones, the school, the health, etc. I'm sure the number is quite astounding. So what are some things I can offer you that will help us really manage our experience? How we show up matters. So our look, it's not about fashion, but making that effort and putting forth our energy for the people on the other side of the screen will make a difference. And it also helps us organize how we operate. Bear with me a second here. Happy baby. Now, some of our meetings feel like deja vu. They keep repeating the same things, or we see the same people. Take a page from actors and actresses who have to get on the stage and perform every night, saying the same lines, but to different audiences. And they will talk how they have to really search for something that's unique in that experience. The other thing I used for this child is the fact to remind us we're not meant to be Egyptian hieroglyphics, sitting in the same seat in the same pose for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, and more a day. So find ways with your team to move and schedule breaks in between to get your energy back in motion and move your body. The same token, create a sane and comfortable space and keep your Zoom participants' experience in mind. I know I've met a lot of dogs and cats and everything, but figure out what's going to work best for the people that are attending your meeting so they know that they have your focus and attention. And time is so important because we never know what's going on behind the scenes. Give everybody a chance to be heard, especially our introverts. One of the things I recommend in the meetings is to assign somebody to scan the screens, particularly when we have a lot of different rectangles and heads looking at us and we don't see everybody's body language. The Zoom options are fantastic, but it's not perfect. So assign a facilitator and also take into consideration that some of the best ideas and the same best brainstorming happens after the meeting is done. So keep that in mind. And I like these guys. But I like these guys even more. Less is more when it comes to Zoom meetings. I bet you all are starting to feel like this, that every day you wake up to see a set of eyes staring at you. So figure out where you can be the most effective. And some of the rule of thumb right now is shorter Zoom meetings and trying to manage the number you have. It's common sense, but sometimes it's hard to do, I know. So like Scrabble, less is more. The other thing I encourage you to do is look at options for recreating those small experiences. Those walk down the hallways and talk to somebody by tapping them on the shoulders. Look, if you know what somebody's looks like, you don't have to set up a visual. Just pick up the phone and call them or leave them a message or do something that really emphasizes maybe a message you had so you can have some clarity. So less is more on your Zoom. Rituals make a difference. One colleague I was speaking to structures staff meetings every week that they always end with a silly kids joke or riddle just to break the ice and release some of the tension. So figure out what some of the rituals you can create. And the other thing to encourage your staff to do is when there's so much change going on, it's sometimes good to come up with a project or a task that has a beginning and end because it feels like, okay, I have control and it got done. Not saying give them more work, but just something that emphasizes the fact that there's some control. And moving on, setting boundaries and expectations. I, for one, am now a very early morning person. Not everybody is happy to hear from me when I decide to text them at some ungodly hour in their time zone. So I think part of the negotiation when we're working in these virtual worlds is we don't know what's going on behind the curtains of what people are managing when it comes to their elder care or child care, et cetera. So figure out some neutral time zones or time periods to have meetings, or even the ideal thing of no pinging and no messaging during certain hours. It's ideal, but it's worth a shot and can take a lot of stress out of the workplace. So I have a couple of slides here that I'll send on through the resource about some points to remember of how to look at what's happening in our heads and then what's happening in our Zoom meetings to greater efficiency. And then also how to reach me, to talk and ask me about some of my experience looking at action learning, looking at what's worked in teams in collaboration as we work through these virtual teams, and then my book as well. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to talk to you and communicate. Thank you.